Once upon a time, in a wealthy African city, there lived a woman named Madame Nana. She was the wife of a powerful businessman, and together they had built an empire. But despite all their riches, the only treasure that truly mattered to her was her son, Kwame. Madame Nana and her husband had only one child, and they had raised him with love and discipline. He had traveled abroad for his education, becoming a refined young man, and now he was finally coming home to take over his late father's company. But there was one thing troubling Madame Nana's heart. Who would her son marry? She had seen the kind of women that flocked around rich men, beautiful on the outside, but empty inside. She didn't want her son to fall into the trap of a woman who only loved his money, so she made a plan. Madame Nana would disguise herself as a cleaner in their company. No one would know she was the owner's wife. She wanted to see for herself which woman had a good heart. Early one morning, she arrived at the company, wearing a faded wrapper and an old blouse. Her headscarf was tied loosely, and she had worn simple rubber slippers. With a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other, she entered the office. Immediately the room went silent. Then came the laughter. Who allowed this old woman in here? One of the ladies, Linda, scoffed, wrinkling her nose in disgust. Maybe she got lost on her way to the village, another, Anita, added, making the others chuckle. Madame Nana remained quiet, pushing her mop across the floor. She was used to being respected, but now, she was just a poor cleaner in their eyes. She noticed one woman was not laughing. Wendy, a young junior staff who was sitting quietly at her desk, focused on her work. Wendy didn't even look at her with pity, only with normal human decency. Madame Nana watched. She had found someone worth observing. The next day, the office was buzzing with chatter. The scent of expensive perfumes filled the air as high heels clicked against the polished floor. Madame Nana, dressed in her usual faded clothes, quietly wiped the floor near the hallway. Her back ached, and her arms felt heavy from all the work, but she continued, determined to endure. Just as she bent to pick up the mop, a sharp voice rang out. "Old woman, you missed a spot." Madame Nana looked up. Anita. With her was Linda, their arms crossed, their faces filled with amusement. "Didn't you hear her?" Linda sneered. "Or are you deaf too?" Madame Nana swallowed hard. She was used to this. She turned back to her work, ignoring them. But Anita wasn't done. "Look at how slow she is," she laughed. "We'll be here all day waiting for her to finish. Maybe she needs some help." Before Madame Nana could react, Anita pushed her, hard. Her frail body lost balance. Madame Nana hit the ground hard. She crashed onto the cold, tiled floor of the company lobby. Laughter erupted around her, high-pitched, cruel. "She's so slow," one of the ladies sneered. "Maybe she needs a walking stick," another mocked, nudging her friend. Madame Nana groaned, struggling to push herself up, her hands trembling against the floor. Her cleaning rag lay beside her, drenched in dirty water. Her old clothes smelled of sweat and soap. No one stepped forward to help her. No one except Wendy. Wendy's small hands gripped Madame Nana's arm, pulling her up with surprising strength. "Are you okay, Mama?" she asked softly. Madame Nana looked into Wendy's eyes, kind, worried, different. Madame Nana straightened herself slowly, her heart still pounding from the fall. Wendy held her steady, concern written all over her face. The other women in the office stifled laughter, exchanging amused glances. "Next time, old woman, watch where you're going," one of them, Anita, scoffed. She eyed Wendy with irritation. "And you, why are you helping her? Let her clean up her own mess." Wendy ignored Anita and bent down, picking up the wet rag. She squeezed the excess water into the bucket before handing it back to Madame Nana. "Mama, you should be careful," she whispered. Madame Nana felt a lump rise in her throat. It had been years since anyone had called her Mama with such tenderness. Since her husband's death, loneliness had settled in her chest like a heavy stone. She glanced around at the other women. Anita and her clique had already returned to their desks, giggling and reapplying lipstick. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual energy. Women clicked their heels on the tiled floor, their perfume heavy in the air. Laughter and whispers filled the space as some gossiped about the latest office drama. Madame Nana walked in silently, her cleaning supplies in hand. Her back ached, but she moved with purpose. She headed toward the break room, where the junior staff usually had lunch. She had spent the night preparing a meal, simple but filling. It was a traditional dish, nkate and kwan, groundnut soup with fufu. The kind of meal that could tell a lot about a person. With slow, deliberate movements, she placed the bowl on the lunch table and sat down. The smell of the soup filled the air, thick with the rich aroma of peanut paste and spices. As expected, the moment she took her first bite, Anita and her friends walked in. They stopped abruptly, staring at her with disgust. "You! What's that smell?" One of them, Linda, cringed. Anita folded her arms, her perfectly manicured nails glistening. "I think it's the cleaner's food," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It smells so local." The other ladies laughed. Madame Nana kept eating, pretending not to hear them. Wendy walked in moments later, her lunchbox in hand. She noticed the scene immediately. Madame Nana sitting alone, Anita and the others whispering and laughing. Wendy hesitated for only a second before walking straight to Madame Nana's table. "Good afternoon, Mama," she greeted, her voice warm. "Good afternoon, my daughter," Madame Nana replied, studying her closely. Wendy sat down and opened her lunchbox. She had brought simple jollof rice, not fancy takeout like the others. Anita smirked and looked at Wendy. "You actually want to sit with her?" Wendy's smile never wavered. "Why not?" She glanced at Madame Nana's bowl. "Mama, that looks delicious. Did you cook it?" Madame Nana's heart warmed. "Yes, my dear. Would you like to taste some?" Wendy nodded eagerly. Madame Nana scooped a small portion into a spoon and handed it to her. The moment Wendy put it in her mouth, Anita burst into laughter. "Look at her, eating food from a cleaner. You really have no shame," Linda scoffed. "You'll probably get sick." Madame Nana turned to Wendy, waiting. Would she spit it out? Would she make an excuse and walk away? But Wendy simply chewed, swallowed, and smiled. "This is amazing, Mama," she said. "It tastes like home." Something in Madame Nana's chest tightened. Later that evening, Madame Nana entered the ladies' washroom, carrying a bucket of soapy water. She took a deep breath, then made her move. With deliberate carelessness, she spilled the bucket, letting the water rush across the floor. Then she dropped the bucket loudly, gasping. "Ah, my waist!" she cried out. Within seconds, Anita and her group entered. The moment they saw her struggling, their faces twisted in amusement. "Oh no, the poor old woman fell again," Anita mocked, her voice dripping with fake concern. Linda snorted. "Maybe she should stop working. She's too old for this." Madame Nana groaned, clutching her waist. "Please, someone help me." Anita folded her arms, tilting her head. "We're not cleaners. It's not our job to clean up messes." The women burst into laughter. Just then, Wendy walked in. She froze at the scene. The wet floor, Madame Nana on the ground, the laughter of the other women. For a moment, silence filled the room. Madame Nana watched closely. Would Wendy pretend not to see? Would she walk away to avoid embarrassment? But Wendy didn't hesitate. She rushed forward, kneeling beside Madame Nana. "Mama, are you okay?" Madame Nana groaned, pretending to struggle. "My waist, my daughter, I can't move." Wendy's eyes filled with worry. She looked up at the other women. "Why are you just standing there? Help me," Anita scoffed. "Help a cleaner, please." Wendy's face hardened. She turned back to Madame Nana. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll take care of you." Then, to everyone's shock, she pulled out her handkerchief and wiped Madame Nana's sweaty face. Then she rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning the floor. The room fell silent. Anita and the others stared in disbelief. "Wendy, are you crazy? She's not your mother," Linda hissed. Wendy ignored them. She continued cleaning until the floor was dry. Then she helped Madame Nana to her feet. "Mama, let me take you to sit down," she said softly. Madame Nana's heart swelled with emotion. The next morning, Wendy arrived at the office early, as usual. She greeted the security guard at the entrance, waved at the receptionist, and walked to her desk. Before she could sit down, Madame Nana appeared beside her. "Good morning, my daughter," she said, her voice gentle. Wendy turned, smiling. "Good morning, Mama. How are you today?" Madame Nana studied her for a moment. No pretense, no fakeness, just warmth. She cleared her throat. "My daughter, I need to ask you for a favor." Wendy's eyes widened. "Of course, Mama. What is it?" Madame Nana hesitated, as if unsure of how to say it. Then she sighed. "You see, I live alone, and I cook, but sometimes eating alone is not good for the soul." Wendy frowned slightly. "Oh, Mama. I was wondering," Madame Nana continued, "if you would join me for dinner. Just once. As my guest." Wendy blinked. "Mama, you want me to visit your house?" Madame Nana nodded slowly. The break room had gone quiet. Anita and Linda, who had been scrolling through their phones, were now staring. Anita scoffed. "Ah, Wendy, you want to eat a cleaner's food in her poor house?" Linda laughed. "She probably lives in one small face me I face you somewhere." Madame Nana remained silent, watching Wendy's reaction. Wendy turned to Anita and Linda. Her voice was firm. "So what if she's a cleaner? She's still a human being." Then she looked back at Madame Nana. "Mama, I would be honored to have dinner with you." Madame Nana's chest tightened with emotion. She smiled. "Thank you, my daughter." That evening, Wendy stood in front of Madame Nana's house, surprised. She had expected a small, struggling home, maybe an old one-bedroom apartment. But the compound was neat. The house, though modest, was well kept. It wasn't what she had expected from a poor cleaner. Who is this woman, really? Madame Nana opened the door, smiling warmly. "Come in, my daughter." Wendy stepped inside, inhaling the rich aroma of jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled fish. The house was simple, but something about it felt different. There was a kind of grace here, a kind of dignity that didn't match what she thought she knew about Madame Nana. They ate together, talking about life, family, and dreams. But Wendy didn't know that she was being watched closely. The night went on, and Wendy never once asked about wealth. She never once looked uncomfortable. She simply enjoyed the company of an old woman who, to her, was just Mama Nana. And that was when Madame Nana knew. She had chosen well. Because soon, Kwame would arrive. And when he did, everything would change. The airport was buzzing with life, luggage carts rolling, families reuniting, taxi drivers calling out for passengers. Amidst it all, a tall, well-dressed man in a crisp navy blue suit walked out of the arrival terminal. Kwame. He had been away for over a decade, studying and working abroad, but now he was back to take over his father's company. The moment Kwame stepped into the office, everything changed. Women who had once been lazy at their desks suddenly sat upright, crossing their legs properly. Makeup was reapplied, skirts were adjusted, and fake smiles appeared. "Ah, he's so handsome," Linda whispered to Anita. "And rich," Anita smirked. "I must be the first to greet him." Kwame, however, barely noticed the attention. He was here for one reason, to continue his father's legacy. And to his surprise, he saw something unexpected. In the middle of the office, an old cleaner was mopping the floor. She was bent slightly, working diligently, her hands rough from years of labor. Something about the scene felt wrong. Kwame frowned, stepping closer. "Excuse me, Mama," he said softly. "Why are you cleaning this floor? Where is the janitorial staff?" The woman looked up, surprised by his concern. Before she could respond, Anita interrupted. "Ah, sir. Don't worry about her," she said sweetly. "She's just a cleaner. She's used to this kind of work." Kwame turned to her, his frown deepening. "Used to it?" His voice was sharp. "Does that mean she shouldn't be treated with respect?" Anita's face fell. But before she could stammer a response, Wendy's voice cut in. "She deserves all the respect in the world." Kwame turned to the speaker and saw her. A young woman, different from the rest. No heavy makeup, no exaggerated smile. Just a quiet confidence. Their eyes met, and something in Kwame's chest tightened. From the moment he locked eyes with Wendy, something inside him stirred. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was stunning in a simple, effortless way. It was something deeper. There was kindness in her eyes. A quiet strength. Who was she? Later that day, Madame Nana sat in her office. Well, the janitor's storage room, pretending to sort through cleaning supplies. But her ears were sharp, listening to the murmurs floating through the office. Anita and Linda were at it again. "Ah, Wendy, how did you do it?" Linda teased. "You just opened your mouth once and the boss noticed you." Anita smirked. "Are you sure you don't have jazz? Because that man didn't even look at the rest of us." Wendy sighed. "I didn't do anything." We'll see." Anita flicked her hair. "But just know, if you're planning to use your innocent face to climb higher, you'll have competition." They walked away giggling. Madame Nana clenched her fists. These girls. But she had no time to focus on them. The real work was just beginning. Kwame sat in his new office, fingers tapping on the desk. He should have been going through reports. The company board had given him a mountain of responsibilities. But his mind was elsewhere. On the girl from earlier. With a deep breath, he picked up his intercom and pressed a button. "Rose, please send Wendy from junior staff to my office." Then the receptionist's voice crackled through. "Sir? Wendy?" "Yes." "Right away, sir." Downstairs, Wendy froze. The boss wanted to see her. Her heart pounded. Had she done something wrong? Anita and Linda were staring, eyes wide with jealousy. I told you she had jazz," Anita whispered. Wendy ignored them and forced her legs to move. She knocked softly on the massive wooden door. "Come in," a deep voice called. She stepped inside, feeling like she had entered another world. The office was grand. Polished wood, large windows with a breathtaking city view, shelves lined with books. And behind the huge desk sat Kwame, his sharp eyes watching her closely. For a second, she forgot to breathe. He was even more handsome up close. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quickly, lowering her gaze. Kwame studied her. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier," he said. "I just don't like seeing people treated unfairly." Wendy blinked. That was why he had noticed her? She smiled softly. "Thank you, sir. That was kind of you." Kwame hesitated, then asked, "How long have you worked here?" "A few months, sir." "And that cleaner? The older woman? You seem close to her." Wendy's eyes brightened. "Mama Nana? Yes. She's a wonderful person." Kwame's heart warmed at the name. Mama Nana. She had already won Wendy's heart without Wendy even knowing who she really was. Kwame leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about her." And for the next few minutes, he just listened. To the way Wendy spoke about kindness, about respect, about treating people with dignity. And the more she spoke, the more Kwame knew. This was no ordinary woman. And just like that, without knowing it, Wendy had taken her first step into his world. But Madame Nana was not done yet. The office was buzzing with rumors. Wendy had been called into the boss's office. The boss's office. Anita and Linda couldn't keep quiet. "I knew it," Anita whispered as she applied lip gloss. "She has been pretending all this time, but she knows what she's doing." "Maybe she's just lucky," Linda added, flipping her hair. Anita scoffed. "Lucky? In this world, people don't just get lucky. She's playing the game, and I'll make sure she doesn't win." They both turned to look at Wendy, who was quietly typing at her desk. Linda leaned closer. "So, what did the boss say?" Wendy barely glanced at her. "Nothing serious. He just asked about Mama Nana." Anita's eyes widened. "That cleaner again? What is wrong with you? Instead of using the opportunity to impress him, you were talking about that old woman?" Wendy sighed, tired of the conversation. "Mama Nana is a good person. I respect her, and I won't stop because you don't." Anita folded her arms. You'll regret it. But Wendy wasn't listening anymore. She had work to do. Later that evening, Madame Nana sat in her small house, staring at a pot of steaming soup. She had been expecting Wendy. True to her word, Wendy had agreed to have dinner with her again. Just as Madame Nana was about to dish the food, there was a soft knock on the door. "Come in, my daughter," she called. Wendy stepped inside, smiling. "Ah, Mama, something smells delicious," she said, sniffing the air. Madame Nana chuckled. "Sit, sit. Today we are eating properly." As Wendy settled in, Madame Nana studied her closely. She had seen how the other girls treated Wendy. She had seen their jealousy, their sharp tongues, and she knew something was coming. Something that would test Wendy's heart. So, before they began eating, she placed her hand on Wendy's and looked into her eyes. "My daughter," she said softly, "be careful." Wendy frowned. "Mama, what do you mean?" Madame Nana sighed. "You are a good person. But not everyone will be happy for you. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend." Wendy swallowed. She knew that was true. But before she could respond, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me at Grand Royal Hotel tomorrow at 7 p.m. Alone. I have something important to tell you." Wendy frowned. "Mama, someone just sent me a strange message." Madame Nana leaned forward. "What does it say?" Wendy read it out. Madame Nana's face darkened. She had a bad feeling about this, but she simply smiled and said, "Be careful, my daughter. Not everything that glitters is gold." The next day, Wendy arrived at the Grand Royal Hotel, her heart pounding. Who had sent that message, and why did they want to meet her here? As she stepped inside, she saw someone waiting at a table in the corner. Anita. Wendy's stomach sank. She should have known. Anita smirked. "Ah, Wendy. You came." Wendy folded her arms. "What do you want?" Anita leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully. If you know what's good for you, you will stay away from Kwame." Wendy blinked. "Stay away from... I don't even know him like that?" Anita laughed coldly. "Don't act stupid. The boss has already noticed you, and we both know it's only a matter of time before he starts chasing you." Wendy shook her head in disbelief. "This is ridiculous." Anita's eyes darkened. "No, Wendy. What's ridiculous is thinking you have a chance with him." She slid a brown envelope across the table. Wendy's heart pounded as she slowly opened it. Money. A lot of money. "I'll make it simple," Anita said smoothly. "Take this and quit the company. Leave quietly. Forget about Kwame." Wendy stared at the money. Her rent was due. Her younger brother needed school fees. Her mother's hospital bills were piling up. This money could solve everything. She swallowed hard. Then, with steady hands, she pushed the money back. "No." Anita's face twisted with rage. "You're making a mistake." Wendy stood. "No, Anita. You are making a mistake." She turned and walked away, her heart racing. Anita had tried to buy her, and Wendy had passed the test. But she didn't know that someone else had been watching. In the far corner of the restaurant, hidden behind dark glasses, Madame Nana sat, sipping her tea. She had seen everything, and now she was certain. The night air was cool, but Wendy felt hot inside. She had just rejected a bribe that could have changed her life. Her mind was spinning. She could barely think straight as she walked away from the hotel. Why was this happening? She had no intention of chasing Kwame. She wasn't like Anita and the others. So why were they so threatened by her? She reached home, exhausted. But just as she was about to fall asleep, her phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Wendy's stomach twisted. She put the phone down and closed her eyes, whispering a quiet prayer. Something told her this was only the beginning. Wendy arrived at work early as usual, but the moment she stepped inside, she felt it. Something was wrong. People were staring, whispering, some were laughing. She frowned. What was going on? Then she saw Anita, standing in the middle of the office, holding her phone high in the air. Everyone, please, listen to this, Anita announced. She pressed a button, and suddenly, Wendy's own voice filled the office. Kwame is already noticing you, and we both know it's only a matter of time before he starts chasing you. This is ridiculous. No, Anita, you are making a mistake. The audio had been edited, twisted. Anita had made it sound like Wendy was boasting about Kwame chasing her. The office erupted with laughter. So all that innocent face was fake, someone sneered. She's just like the rest of us, but pretending to be humble, another added. Wendy's face burned with shame. Her hands clenched into fists. Anita stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with victory. I warned you, she whispered. You should have taken the money. Wendy felt tears sting her eyes, but she held them back. She wouldn't let Anita break her. Not like this. Kwame had just finished a meeting when he heard the commotion. He stepped into the open office space, confused. What's going on here? The laughter died instantly. People turned away, pretending to work. Kwame's sharp gaze swept the room, then landed on Wendy. She was standing there, stiff and silent. Something was wrong. His eyes flicked to Anita. What happened? He asked. Anita smiled sweetly. Oh, nothing, sir. We were just having some fun with Wendy. Kwame's jaw tightened, his eyes darkened. Anita. His voice was calm but firm. Step into my office, now. Anita's face paled. She tried to laugh. Oh, sir, it was just a joke. I said now. The entire office went silent. Kwame turned to Wendy, his voice gentler. Are you okay? Wendy swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, sir. But deep down, she wasn't. She had just been humiliated in front of everyone, and she knew this wouldn't be the last time. Madame Nana had seen everything. She had been standing in the hallway, watching as Anita publicly humiliated Wendy. Her blood boiled. How dare they treat her like this? Wendy had done nothing wrong. That evening, as she sat with Wendy for dinner, she spoke in a quiet, firm voice. My daughter, she said, tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for Kwame? Wendy nearly choked on her food. Mama, what? No, I barely know him. Madame Nana studied her face. She was telling the truth. She sighed, placing her hand on Wendy's. Then listen to me carefully. Wendy nodded. These girls will not stop, Madame Nana said. They are determined to destroy you. You must be strong. Wendy's eyes softened. Mama, why do you care so much about me? Madame Nana hesitated. She could not tell Wendy the truth. Not yet. She simply smiled. Because, my daughter, I see something special in you. Wendy smiled back. But neither of them knew that the worst was yet to come. Because someone else had decided to enter the game. And soon, the truth would change everything. The office was unusually silent. Anita walked in confidently, her heels clicking against the floor. She had won yesterday. Wendy had been embarrassed. Kwame had noticed her, yes, but in the worst way possible. Now, all she had to do was act innocent. She smirked to herself. Everything was going according to plan. But the moment she sat at her desk, something strange happened. She felt a presence, like someone was watching her. She turned, and there, standing near the cleaning supplies, was Mama Nana. The old cleaner was staring at her, not with the usual humility, not with the usual silence. There was something in her eyes, something knowing. Anita swallowed. Wait, what? She snapped. Madame Nana didn't speak. She just smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Then, without a word, she picked up her mop and walked away. Anita shivered. Why did she feel scared? Kwame sat at his desk, lost in thought. He kept thinking about Wendy. She had been humiliated yesterday, but she hadn't fought back. She had simply held her head high and walked away. That kind of strength, it wasn't common. He pressed the intercom. Rose, call Wendy to my office. Downstairs, Wendy sighed when she got the message. Again? Why did the boss keep calling her? She gathered her courage and walked up. When she entered, Kwame was staring out of the window. He turned when he heard her. "Sit." Wendy obeyed, her heart pounding. Kwame studied her for a moment. "Are you okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Kwame sighed. "I know what happened yesterday, and I want you to know, I won't tolerate bullying in this company." Wendy blinked. Was he defending her? She looked down at her hands. "Thank you, sir. But I don't want any trouble." Kwame leaned forward. "Sometimes, trouble finds you," he said softly. Wendy's breath caught. For the first time, she realized something. Kwame wasn't just kind. He was watching. And something in his eyes told her he wasn't going to stop. That night, Anita tossed and turned in her sleep. She kept dreaming of Mama Nana, the old woman's eyes, that smile. It haunted her. At exactly 3 a.m., Anita woke up screaming. Her phone vibrated. A message. From unknown number. "You have touched the wrong person." Anita's hands shook. She looked around her dark room. No one was there. But she felt it. Someone was watching her. She wasn't safe. Not anymore. The next morning, the sun was barely up when Wendy heard a knock at her door. She groggily sat up, rubbing her eyes. Who could it be this early? When she opened the door, she froze. 2 police officers stood outside. Her heart dropped. "Are you Wendy Mensah?" one of them asked. "Yes," she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "You're under arrest for theft and fraud." Wendy's breath caught in her throat. "What?" Before she could react, cold handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Tears sprang to her eyes as neighbors peeked out of their homes, whispering. "I didn't do anything," she cried. The officers didn't listen. And just like that, Wendy's world shattered. At the police station, Wendy sat in a cold, dark cell. Her mind was spinning. How had this happened? She had never stolen anything in her life. A guard appeared. "Someone posted your bail." Wendy's eyes widened. "Who?" The guard shrugged. "She's waiting outside." Confused and afraid, Wendy followed him out. The moment she stepped into the waiting area, she gasped. "Mama Nana?" The old woman stood there, arms crossed, eyes full of sadness. Wendy's lip trembled. "Mama, I swear I didn't do it." Madame Nana stepped forward and wiped a tear from Wendy's cheek. "I know, my daughter," she said softly. "I know." Wendy broke down, sobbing into Madame Nana's arms. But even as she cried, she didn't know. This was only the beginning. Kwame sat in his office, scrolling through his phone when a headline made his stomach drop. Junior staff Wendy Mensah arrested for fraud. His heart stopped. "No," he whispered. This didn't make sense. He grabbed his car keys and stormed out of the building. He needed to see her. Now. Across town, Anita sat in a luxurious hotel room, sipping champagne. Linda sat beside her, scrolling through her phone. "Kwame left the office in a hurry," Linda said. "People are saying he's going to see Wendy." Anita smirked. "Let him," she said. "By the time I'm done, Wendy will be nothing." Linda hesitated. "Anita, are you sure about this? Framing someone is dangerous." Anita's eyes flashed. "I warned her," she said coldly. "She should have taken the money." Linda swallowed hard. Something about Anita's voice scared her. But it was too late to turn back now. The damage was already done. And soon, Wendy's life would completely fall apart. Madame Nana sat with Wendy in her small house. She watched as Wendy wiped away fresh tears. "Why is this happening to me?" Wendy whispered. "What did I do wrong?" Madame Nana's heart ached. She wanted to tell Wendy the truth, that she wasn't just a poor cleaner, that she was the owner of the company, that her son was Kwame, that she had been testing Wendy all along. But the time wasn't right. Instead, she gently held Wendy's hand. "My daughter," she said softly, "sometimes, when life tests you, It means something greater is coming. Wendy looked at her with tired eyes. But what if I fail? Madame Nana smiled. Then you stand up and try again. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Madame Nana tensed. Wendy frowned and stood to open it. The moment she did, her breath caught. Kwame stood outside, his eyes full of worry. For a second, they just stared at each other. Then Kwame stepped inside. I need to know the truth, he said softly. Wendy swallowed hard. She had nothing left. Would he believe her? Or was this the final end? Wendy stood frozen at the doorway, staring at Kwame. Her heart pounded. She had never expected him to come. Not after everything. Kwame stepped inside, his face unreadable. Wendy, he said, his voice softer than she expected. Tell me the truth. Did you steal the money? Tears burned Wendy's eyes. No, she whispered. I didn't. Kwame studied her face. There was no hesitation in her voice, no guilt. He wanted to believe her, but the evidence, it was strong. The company's financial team had traced missing funds to her account. Large deposits. Money Wendy couldn't possibly have earned. Even the police had been convinced. Wendy's voice trembled. Kwame, someone framed me. Kwame exhaled slowly. Do you know who? Wendy hesitated. Her gut told her Anita was behind this. But there was no proof. And after what Anita had done to her already, she knew how dangerous she could be. Kwame noticed her hesitation. His face darkened. Wendy, if you're lying to me, I swear. I'm not lying, Wendy cried, her voice breaking. I don't know how that money got into my account. I swear on my life. Kwame flinched at the raw pain in her voice. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned toward the door. I'll investigate, he said quietly. If I find out you're telling the truth, I'll make sure the real thief pays. And just like that, he was gone. Leaving Wendy standing in the middle of the room, her heart shattered. Meanwhile, Anita sat at a fancy restaurant, sipping her cocktail, feeling victorious. Wendy was ruined. By tomorrow, she would be jobless. And soon, Kwame would forget all about her. But just as she was about to take another sip, her phone rang. She frowned. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A deep, raspy voice whispered through the phone. You have made a terrible mistake. Anita's blood ran cold. Her throat went dry. Who is this? She demanded. No answer. Just the sound of slow breathing. Then, click. The call ended. Anita sat frozen, gripping the phone tightly. A chill ran down her spine. Something felt wrong. Very, very wrong. The next morning, Kwame sat in his office, his mind racing. Something wasn't adding up. If Wendy really stole the money, why didn't she flee? Why did she look genuinely broken when he confronted her? He rubbed his temples. He needed answers. And he knew exactly where to start. He picked up his phone. Security? Yes, sir. Pull up the CCTV footage from Wendy's office. There was a pause. Then, sir, there's a problem. Kwame frowned. What problem? All the footage from that week is missing. Kwame's blood ran cold. Missing. Someone had erased the evidence. And suddenly Kwame knew. Wendy had been telling the truth all along. He had made a terrible mistake. And now, it was time to make things right. But what Kwame didn't know was that someone was already one step ahead of him. Kwame's heart pounded as he gripped his phone. The CCTV footage was gone. Someone had erased it. And that meant only one thing. Wendy was framed. He had doubted her, accused her. And now, he needed to fix it.